with the entire world covered in a symbiote goo, darkness prevailing everywhere. What are the heroes of this universe doing to fight against evil? This is the Comicstorian channel where we take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and we break them down into digestible bites. We then read them dramatically back to you. And right now, every Saturday, we are bringing you a new chapter of King in Black by bringing you all of the tie-ins in the order that they have been released. Now, this particular week didn't have any Venom issues or any core King in Black issues. So what we brought you was 3 of the tie-ins. Gwenom VS Carnage #1, King in Black Thunderbolts #1, and King in Black Planet of the Symbiotes #1. So let's go ahead and kick that off and get this video started. I hope you guys are excited. The city of New York is covered in a black goo from the symbiote god Null. The sky is as dark as the world has been trapped into a globe of Null's power, and dragons roar as they fill the eternally night skies. Gwen Stacy, known as Spider-Woman, is in her own universe, crawling up the side of a building trying to avoid the goo that covers everything. But she's had no choice but to leap to the rescue when she hears someone yell out in fear. "Hold on, I'm coming!" she shouts as she leaps past more of the black tar. She finds a man screaming as the goo is covering around his body. "You're a superhero, right? Help me!" the guy yells as he sees Gwen approaching. She shoots her webbing, beginning to pull the man free, but the goo creeps up his body, wrapping around his head. "No, we're getting you out of here!" Gwen yells as she pulls harder, her webbing snapping through and she's thrown clear. She struggles back to her feet, calling out to the lost man, and the black goo begins to pulse and split apart, revealing a symbiotic monster. Gwen's own symbiote reacts, becoming more alert as the web slinger leaps away. "I'm so out of my element with this," she thinks to herself as she swings away from the monster. She moves quickly through the destroyed city, finally arriving back at the apartment that she shares with some of her fellow students. "I'm back," she calls out, heading into the living room. Her roommates are trying to stay calm while Carrie tries to make improvised weapons as Gwen sits on the couch, and her friends offer to head to the next scavenger run. "How bad can it be?" Carrie asks, and Gwen looks up at her. "Carrie, you know not to say that," she shouts, and the wall suddenly explodes inward as one of the symbiote dragons launches itself at them. Gwen quickly morphs back into her costume as she leaps across the room, trying to protect her friends. She ends up jumping around, webbing up the dragon's mouth, trying to contain it. "Come on, chase the girl in the costume made of living spiders, not the co-eds," Gwen calls out. She knows not to let the monster touch her, though. She knows that there's no time for anything fancy. She quickly picks up a table and smashes it over the dragon's head. The dragon roars as Gwen launches herself towards the door. "You girls stay covered! Don't let the goo touch you!" she shouts as she heads out the door, drawing the dragon's attention. But the goo touches the girls on the way out and they begin to transform. Gwen webs several cabinets and vending machines, swinging them into the dragon with super strength. She then leaps past it back into the hallway. Back inside of their apartment, Gwen doesn't find her roommates, but she does find 3 roommate-sized pods of goo. "You were good roommates. I'm sorry," Gwen says, trying to take a moment of peace. But that's when the dragon roars its head, pulling itself back into the room. "Now is not the time! I'm mourning!" she shouts as she throws another table at the monster. As her friends begin to emerge from their pods, Gwen leaps out the window and away. The dragon continues to chase her through the skies of the city, but Gwen holds its teeth and manages to land on the monster's back after she webs up her feet. She lashes at the creature's mouth with her webbing, trying desperately to steer it. Gwen then leaps away as the dragon crashes hard into the side of a building, exploding into a shower of black goo. As she falls through the air, Gwen reaches for her teleporter necklace. She promised that she wouldn't use it unless it was an emergency, but she kind of feels like this counts. As she pricks her finger with the sharp necklace, her symbiote begins to react violently, and something goes wrong. Meanwhile, over on Earth 65, Mary Jane Watson is strapped to a table, the Jackal laughing at her, telling her that she shouldn't struggle. "In the absence of Miss Stacy, I need your help with a little project. You see, after our last encounter, I was able to acquire some of your fascinating spiders," he tells her as he holds up the small jar. "They bonded to her, and she bonded with you. I'm wondering if they might bridge the divide," he tells her as he dumps the jar out. Those spiders begin to crawl over MJ's body as she screams, when suddenly her body twists and she disappears. The Jackal stares at the empty table that MJ was just sitting on. "Yeah, not the outcome that I was expecting," he says simply. On Earth 616, Mary Jane is suddenly ripped clear of Gwen's falling body. "Feels like I'm being split in two. Is that MJ?" Gwen thinks sharply, and MJ keeps falling as Gwen lashes out with her webs. "MJ, hold on!" she shouts, and then she pulls her in close, grabbing her and shielding her body as they smash into the goo on the ground. Gwen sits up quickly, the goo already covering MJ, when suddenly a voice can be heard. Interesting, Null rumbles from his black throne. What are you, little one? Mine but not mine, something else, something other. Like me. Everything is mine, and now I shall acquire it, he says with a smile. Gwen tries to pull MJ free, but as she reaches for her, the young woman rises up. Mary Jane isn't there, little spider. Only Null. And as his willing disciple, we think we can come up with a new name. The name of our Lord's most favored child. You can call me Carnage. Mary Jane snarls as she begins to move forward. The next issue that we'll be covering is King in Black, Planet of the Symbiotes. The city is destroyed, covered in the black goo, and the boy cries in the backseat of his car. His parents are in front. The windshield is cracked, and the dashboard is covered in their blood. They're dead. Brock! The symbiote hiss. Dylan! They call as they peer through the glass at the boy. The windows crack and the glass scatters as the symbiotes reach in for him, pulling him clear. Riot, Agony, Lasher, Phage, Children of Venom, Children of Null. Help me! The boy screams as Lasher pulls him in close, opening up his toothy mouth to eat the young boy. What do we have here? A family reunion? Scream calls, her hair wrapping around Lasher's throat, lifting him into the air. The child is not for you! She shouts as she throws him aside. The symbiotes snarl at her for forsaking her own kind to help the humans, and they begin to merge, becoming a multi-headed symbiote monster. A gaping mouth that opens up in the monster's chest has the voice of Null, and he calls out, There you are! Still hiding behind your children, I see! Scream hisses at him. A chuckle can be heard from Null. You're vexing, child. I wondered when our paths might cross again. Time to return to the hive, where you rightfully belong. But Scream's hallmark is heat and fire. Never! She snarls as she launches an attack at the monster. The creature bellows in pain, but recovers quickly, attacking her with a whip of teeth. It throws her into the nearby car before leaping on her. This planet has made you weak. Your host has made you weak. All of you. Every symbiote on this rock. Null snarls, the monster reaching down, beginning to absorb and devour Scream, making her a part of the hive once again. Yes! He screams in triumph, but suddenly he stops, screaming in pain as light begins to break through his skin. It explodes into a shower of light and fire, and when the smoke clears, Scream stands alone, walking over to the boy who is still cowering in fear. It's okay. I won't hurt you, Scream tells him as the symbiote shifts away from her face. I'm Auntie. You're safe now, and I've got you, she tells the boy as she takes his hand. They walk away, unaware of the symbiote slithering into the sewer behind them. Meanwhile, over at Ravenloft Institute, guards patrol the perimeter, making small talk in the quiet of the night when suddenly one guard shines his light into the sky, yelling a curse as a black dragon descends from the sky. Dragons, we gotta! He begins turning to his partner, but the other guard has already run, fleeing inside. The man hits the ground as the dragons collide with him. The symbiote begins to slither, moving through Ravenloft quickly. The guards keep running further into the basement. The time is now. God is no longer coming. God is... The guard screams as he opens up a door to a hidden chamber, revealing the image of Null leaning over a dead body. God is here! Null bellows, and the guard falls to his knees, telling his god that he has merely come to prepare the body for Null's arrival. So that the cult can begin the resurrection process, the guard says, but Null leans over the body with a smile. No need, my child. Do you know who this man is? Do you truly know? The guard nods, telling him that this is Cortland Cassidy, the world's first serial killer. Null raises up, smiling. None spread more darkness than he did. Now, after all of these centuries, he will serve me once again in a new capacity, Null says, and he opens up his mouth, vomiting forth another symbiote that begins to twist around the body. He orders Cassidy to rise. Arise, plague! Null commands, and as Null takes his leave, he asks the guard if he's willing to give for their cause. The guard begins to cough as Plague begins to suck the life force out of his body, becoming stronger. It's good to be back, Plague sighs. The guards enter the chamber, leveling their weapons at the new monster, but before they can fire, the life force is sucked out of their bodies as well, and they fall to the floor. My, the people of this century are rather tasty. I do believe I'm going to enjoy it here. Plague bellows of joy when suddenly claws rake across the monster's back. He turns, seeing the great werewolf standing before him. That depends. You into getting your throat ripped out by a space werewolf? Then yeah. Jameson snarls, but Jameson begins to cough as Plague sucks the life out of him. A powerful fist hits him from behind, and Plague turns to see Misty Knight standing behind him now. A woman with a metal arm. Surely this is a wonderful world I've awoken to. Plague snarls, but they both begin to fall as Plague continues to suck the life force out of them as well. The guards begin to flood into the room, and Plague looks around at them all. More of you? Ah, I would stay and drain each of you to the bone, but alas, time is of the essence, and my lord demands my presence elsewhere, for it is time I avenged my bloodline. Plague shouts, and in a flash of light he disappears. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hate this place, Misty says as she climbs to her feet, but Jameson stands as well, telling her that this isn't just a Ravencroft problem anymore. Notify our superiors. We have a new target. Which brings us to King in Black, Thunderbolts. Wilson Fisk sits before his gathered assortment of villains that he has collected from the bar with no name. He slams his fist against the table, interrupting their witty banter with one another. You've all been operating in my city without permission. You owe me, but I've got good news. A giant alien god named Null has come to kill every living thing, and it's beginning to look like it can do it. Your definition of good news and mine are different, Star tells him, and Fisk glances at the new woman for giving her interruption. Now, if you'll work for me, stop this, save the world, become a hero, parades for all, and I'll make you rich. Or? Star asks. And Fisk looks around the room, telling them that he'll put them in prison, and they can wait for Null to come kill them in their cells. Incinerary raises his hand, telling Fisk that while he's afraid of Fisk, he's afraid of the Death God more. I'll take my chances in lockup. Fisk nods to him, appreciating his honesty and ordering the guards to take him away. And a minute later, a gunshot can be heard in the next room. Oh dear. It seems Incendiary tried to make an escape. What a shame, Wilson says as he looks around at the rest of the villains, and the rest all raise their hands that they're in. Fisk admits that he doesn't really know how to stop the god, but points them in the direction of someone who might, and he hands them over the reports that they're going to need and the contracts that they have to sign. Finally, he leans over the table. You work for me now. Don't hide. Show your faces, he tells them. And Taskmaster looks up. Absolutely not. A short time later, the team is walking through the city streets, unmasked. They've all been given a new superhero team name, the Thunderbolts, due to Fisk owning the copyrights to the title. We should call ourselves the Hope League, Fear jokes as they move through the destruction of the city. He suddenly leans down and a giant symbiote dragon snaps down, biting Snakehead in half. Thunderbolts spread out, Taskmaster shouts as Star leaps into the sky. How's Snakehead? She asks as she hits the dragon with an energy blast. Very dead, Fear calls out as he stares at the lower half of the former villain's body. Fear moves in quickly, attacking the monster with his gas gun, and it rears back in pain as Sky hits it with a powerful energy blast, destroying it. She lands amongst the team, but quickly becomes faint and starts to fall. Easy, madame. Perhaps that was too much, no? Batroc says with a smile as he catches her. Snakehead's dead and our big gun just fainted. I'm out, Ampere says quickly, and Taskmaster steps up, telling the villain that the team is going to need all the power that they can get. If the world doesn't end, Fisk can deal with me when he finds out, Ampere argues. I'll save him the trouble, coward! Mr. Fear snaps as he stabs Ampere in the back. Everyone looks at him in shock, but Fear pulls the dead man's energy gauntlets off his wrist as he explains that they need all the power they can get. Just because he isn't going to use them doesn't mean we can't, Fear says with a smile. And Taskmaster looks at the rest of the team. Fine, we got a job to do. And we're doing it as a team. Nobody else leaves or they'll deal with me. Rhino reaches down, tapping the man on the head. I'm leaving, he says simply, and Taskmaster smiles as he pats the big man on the arm. Hey, sure thing, big guy, didn't mean you. Star looks at Taskmaster as Rhino walks away. I'm playing the odds that getting beat by one of those dragons is quicker than him stomping me to death. Au revoir, hippopotamus! Batroc calls to their departing friend. And the rest of the team divvy up Ampere's gear and continue to move through the city. Taskmaster tells them that they have to head to the river and take a boat. Good guys steal boats? Mr. Fear asks. No, we commandeer them. Taskmaster nods, and behind them, the black goo begins to cover Ampere. Moving through the city, they round the corner to the site of the Heroes for Hire fighting against the symbiote monsters. Shouldn't we help them? We're on the same side now, Star asks as the group takes cover behind a car, but Mr. Fear shakes his head, explaining that the heroes would lock them up in a second if they get a chance. Mr. Fear's right, we gotta go around, Taskmaster says with a nod, and the group quickly crawls away from the action, moving through another side alleyway. We got company, Batroc says, pointing up to one of the symbiote monsters above them. It's like a drippy Spider-Man, Star tells the group in disgust, and the monster launches itself at the group, attacking Mr. Fear. Taskmaster steps up with his Ampere-charged sword, cutting the monster's head off in a single blow. There's a man inside, Batroc says in wonder as the goo begins to flow out. So Taskmaster leans over the body, studying it. Yeah, it's like venom, he whispers, and Batroc looks at him in shock. There's a man inside of Venom? He gasps. Taskmaster nods and explains about the symbiotes, and with a smile, Mr. Fear holds up the head of Vampire. First time I've ever killed a guy twice, he says with a smile, and Taskmaster leans in to inspect the head. I killed him this time. New rule, don't let the goop touch you. He looks up, telling the group that they are going to keep moving, but his eyes widen in fear as he looks back down the street. Too late, Thunderbolts, run! He screams as a wave of symbiote monsters come roaring at them. Ah! Batroc could slow them down! The Leaper shouts as he kicks out some of Vampire's gear. They keep running to the pier and they finally jump onto a boat, and as Taskmaster hotwires their ride, Mr. Fear cuts the boat free of the dock. Star turns back, seeing Batroc running for the pier. I'm going back for him, she shouts, but the villain reaches the end of the pier and leaps. His jump takes him clear across the gap and he lands on the deck of the boat with ease. Batroc has returned! Do not thank me all at once. He does them with a smile, and suddenly everyone's weapons are aimed at his head. Did they touch you? Taskmaster says sharply. Batroc does not get touched unless he desires it, the Frenchman says with indignation. Gross, Mr. Fear whispers. A short time later, the team docks the boat at Ravenloft Island. They cross the courtyard, opening the door to the main building. Inside, they find Norman Osborn waiting for them. Thank goodness you made it, I was worried. Norman tells them with a smile. Well, team, we're all dead. Mr. Fear frowns. And that concludes these 3 issues of the King in Black tie-in issues. Now, this week didn't have any core issues, so it's all the fun side issues. Gwenom vs. Carnage, in my opinion, is just going to be a fun storyline of 2 symbiotes fighting. Thunderbolts seems super interesting as well, because, I mean, we basically have a Suicide Squad / Goofy group fighting against the symbiotes, and of course we have the Planet of the Symbiotes, which seems to be a bunch of short stories. Now, each of these was issue 1 in their series, so Thunderbolts 1, Gwenom vs. Carnage number 1, Planet of the Symbiotes number 1. Next week we'll be back with just King in Black number 3, as nothing else came out with that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, check back every Saturday for the next chapter of King in Black, and make sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian, where you can get early access to a lot of our projects over there, such as our podcasts and D&D games. Patreon.com/Comicstorian. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, and I will see you next week right here.